Where are we going from here? M87 in the bag. We're confident that very soon we'll complete the analysis of Sagittarius A star. We will go back to observe, and so please stay tuned. We'll come back. We are already underway improving the array. Foremost, ERAM's expanded NOEMA array that they will soon finish will again be a game changer for our trade. ALMA will offer us improved capabilities. And the Greenland telescope and perhaps the African Millimeter Telescope project will make critical contributions to improving the quality of the EHT. With all of this, we're well placed to go into the next step of this journey. That we will be able to confirm a lot of the signs that we're expecting. But much more important, we will be able, with this machine, to make discoveries of the unexpected. And that's the most fascinating in science. I personally like to say that I will think of a time before and after I saw for the first time this image. You mentioned this also. Today, I believe for all of us, marks the beginning of the day after for all of us. Thank you very much for your support, and thank you for your interest in our science. Now we will be ready to take your questions. Thank you.
Thank you much for these presentations, and I dare say our press room will always be open for such extraordinary announcements. Now we can turn to your media questions. Let me point out that we've published abundant not only press material and words, but more importantly, audiovisual material on the Commission website. May I please ask you to introduce yourselves by name and media, starting in the middle?
Thank you very much. My name is Nicholas Wallace. I'm policy editor at Science Business. My question is for Commissioner Moedas. You said that this is the most excited you've been since you took office in 2014. My question is, do you expect any more excitement before your term ends? And if not, given that this was an international project that the Commission contributed to, what should be next for the EU and international collaboration in science? What do you think the next big thing should be for the next commissioner? Thanks.
Thank you very much for the question. Yes, I think that this is really the pinnacle. I mean, I had exciting moments, exciting political moments, exciting when I was able to put forward to the College of Commissioners a proposal for 100 billion euros for the next science program. That really made my heart beat very much and made me more nervous about it at the time in a positive way. When then we went to the Parliament and the Council and we discussed, and a couple of weeks ago we achieved really something unique, is that we had that agreement with the countries and the Parliament for the content of that program of the future. And so one of the things that is in that program answers your question, which is that is linked between the citizens and science, and how important is that. And so we want to define this idea of the missions, the mission-driven science, because we want European citizens to feel connected. And that connection that happened here today, it's a proof of that. You know, I've never seen this room so full, or if I've seen it, was not for positive reasons or for reasons of crisis, and not for positive things. And it's so refreshing to come here, to see so many people, to see people clap. I mean, it's very rare in a press room to have people clapping. And so I think that is a sign for politicians that you should look at science in Europe as really the engine of growth and the only way forward to be the center. And so in terms of international collaboration, and I've said it so many times, I really believe that this is all about the European program to be open to the world. I mean, we are discussing with countries like Canada, New Zealand, we're discussing around the world to have people that want to be part of the European program. Because the European program, as the history of Europe, is not about Europe, it's about getting people together. It's more than Europe, we are bigger than that, and that's what makes Europe be at the center stage. And so I think there's really for the next couple of years, that will be the mission. The mission is to get everybody on board in a place that is quite unique. You know, I mean, there's not a lot of places in the world where you have the funding that we have for fundamental science. We have Jean-Pierre Bourguignon sitting there with the European Research Council. I mean, that's quite unique, and so I'm proud of that. And yes, today is really a proud moment.
Yes, Natalia.
Thanks for the question. My name is Natalia Drozdiak. I'm with Bloomberg. I was hoping that you could help us understand a bit what impact this discovery has on our understanding of conventional physics laws and how that's going to change now, especially with Albert Einstein's theory of relativity. Thank you.
So, you know, theory is eagerly waiting for confirmations. And Einstein's theory of relativity is the one that we know best and the one that has so far passed all the tests. And this is another very important test. This is the first ever image, and this gives us great confidence that relativity, as the one we understand in the strong field regime, where curvature is very, very strong, actually follows exactly what Einstein predicted.
If you look at the literature, there are a lot of ideas for alternatives of black holes, and this is something you finally can actually test. We only just starting to do this. We can now say it's not a wormhole, for example, but many other things we will test in the future, but it can be done now. Now it becomes experimental science. And we have gravitational waves, and we have pulsars, all testing gravity in an area, in a regime, which has been inaccessible before. And so I think this really transforms the study of gravity in a fundamental way. Really different methods, different scales.
Thank you. Gentleman here in the front. You can take a mic on your side, in the seat. Now.
I'm Davide Castelvecchi from Nature magazine. How many questions do I get?
Can we start with one and then we'll vary it a bit?
Okay. Can you tell us if you found any information about Sagittarius A star?
Okay. I was supposed to say that. We actually focused all our attention on M87 when we saw the very first results, because we knew this one's going to be awesome. The issue with Sagittarius A star is 1,000 times smaller. It's 1,000 times closer, so it has the same shadow size, but it's also 1,000 times faster. So if you want to take an image of that source, it's like taking an image of a toddler which moves around for 8 hours and try to get a still image. While M87 is a big bear, 1,000 times slower, hibernating there, not moving much within these 8 hours. So that makes it much easier. We were just lucky that M87 was so large. It could have been much smaller. We didn't know that before. And so once we saw that, we focused everything on that one. So, we'll still take a little more time to work on Sagittarius star.
We may come back to you later, time permitting. I think I saw some other show of hands. Yes, back there. Markus first, and then in front of you.
Markus Becker with Der Spiegel. I see that the black hole seemed to behave nicely and follow the predictions, but maybe you can explain to us what kinds of new insights you have gained and how they form the basis for possible new research and new insights in the future. Thank you.
So far, our observation is actually exactly what we have expected. But I think there will be more possibilities in the future to investigate the behavior of this black hole. We basically would have to take movies, not just static images. Yeah. We also can learn something about the jet formation. This supermassive black hole is very famous for its huge kiloparsec scale jets. So now we know how this jet is actually coming out from the black hole. So this is a huge new insight of how relativistic jets are produced.
Thank you. Then we had a question right in front of Markus. There? Yeah? No? Okay, well, maybe while you continue thinking about questions or we come back to nature, we also have a number of people following us on social media and online, and they also had the opportunity to ask us questions, so I'll take a couple of those. Firstly, how can you take photos without light?
Well, radio is also light. The radio waves as light as the eye that enters into these detectors we have here, which are called eyes. We use the light, the waves that come from the remote black hole region in such a quite tricky way, because the same light that arrives to the Earth, the same wave comes to all the different telescopes, and we trap this front of light in our computers. We can then reproduce and play back that, but this is also the radio light, which is also the same light that comes into the mobile phones and all that. We are working in the electromagnetic spectrum. Then we can use this light to see the black holes too.
What we see in the image is actually light that is produced by plasma around the black hole. It's true that we cannot see the black hole. It's black, so you cannot see it. But we see its shadow that is being cast on this glowing plasma. So we are actually taking a picture of light.
One little detail, we think that the black hole is actually really engulfed in an optically thin, transparent, glowing fog of radio-emitting material. And so the fact that you see nothing in the center is actually quite significant.
Then we'll take another question, which I think is rather directed at Commissioner Moedas, which is how will the EU support astronomy, that we're now all very fascinated about, in the next EU research funding program?
I think first we support it in the name of our new program. You see, Event Horizon Europe. I never thought about that before, but I think it's a good one. I think that the way, it's very important that Europe keeps on being the leader of fundamental science in the world. I mean, that's where we are at our best. And so when we approached on this proposal for the countries and for the parliament to go from 13 billion euros for the European Research Council to 17 billion euros of the European Research Council, that's exactly about fundamental science. And that's exactly to put this priority as a European priority. Because if we can differentiate there, I think that we can differentiate for the future of our children. Because what I love about fundamental science, and I think that's the question from the journalist over there, which was, but what do you take from here? What are the impact? And the things that we don't know, there's so many impacts that these will have in the future. I think that it's interesting to look at the people that are young now, the very young ones, and think the impact that they will see from these in 50 years, and the fact that we don't know. And that's something that is for the good of Europe and for the good of the world. So I think that if there's a place in the world that invests in fundamental science, it's us, and we should keep doing that for the future. So on the program Horizon Europe, we will keep investing very heavily on fundamental science.
Thank you. Of course, Anton?
From my perspective, and that is that it is very important to see that Europe is investing in the great brains. And at the same time, it's also very important to see that we have in Europe this technological and this edge with our facilities. And I will say that the support that we've had from the Union in actually making these facilities accessible to pan-European scientists has been very important. And even more important has been the seed funding that we have received so that the technology development can be done together at various institutions. And so it's the balance of investing in the individual talent, the brains, and investing into state-of-the-art infrastructures that really sets us apart.
Thank you. Let's come back to questions in the room. Yes.
Hello, Adi Nauw from Astroblog Netherlands. I have a question about the accretion disk of black holes. All black holes seem to have an accretion disk. Did you try to have an image of that accretion disk too? And how do I see the accretion disk compared to this image? Is it outside of this horizon, or I don't know?
So, as you correctly said, these black holes are not in vacuum. They are surrounded by matter, and matter naturally folds and circles around it. Now, in this very image, the accretion disk is essentially as my hand. We're seeing it almost face on. And so it happens that matter that rotates in particularly in clockwise direction, will be pushing towards us. It's all of its emission. And this is why the bottom line is more bright than the top part, because it's what is called Doppler beamed. It's more intense because of a relativistic effect. So you can imagine that there is matter going around in a clockwise in a kind of accretion disk. The disk is not thin as we normally see in science fiction. It's a very thick accretion disk, and the simulations that you will find online will clarify this a bit better.
I would like to add here that it is okay to, this image can have different interpretation, and it is possible that we are actually, that this ring is actually the inner edge of the accretion disk.
Or the inner edge of the jet. That's where it starts. The problem that we have is that the light bending actually blends everything together. So when you look at low radio frequencies, you see the jet. As you go to high frequency, you get closer and closer to the event horizon. That's why we went to this high frequency, because that's where we actually start engulfing the entire black hole. That's where we can resolve the black hole, but that's where the innermost region is, and then everything gets blended together by light bending. So if you look again at the simulations, then you get a much better idea of what we think there is.
So for the Spanish news agency, Agencia F, does the black hole actually has a name other than the black hole of the M87 galaxy?
It didn't have a name. And in analogy to the other source that we study, Sagittarius A star, we just used this short version and called it M87 star, which doesn't mean it's a star, but the star actually means it's a very exciting source. It's one of the most exciting sources in M87. So,
as an amusing note, the reason Hawaiian name which has been associated and proposed for this black hole, so we'll actually have a proper name besides just a number.
Thank you. It's a good idea for a contest, though. Yes, back here, down here. Push the button and wait until it turns red. Yeah.
Koen Wouters, VRT Belgian Television. Have you found something which was unexpected or contradicted Einstein's relativity theory?
Unfortunately not. I think it was mind-blowing to see that in the first place. Had it been completely different from our expectations, we would have had to puzzle for like 2 more years to really, see had we done something wrong. Of course, at some point, you hope to find something that you did not expect in your simulations. By now, everything seems to fit perfectly. Actually, amazingly perfect. I should say, actually, Monica published, shockingly, she published a paper 2016. If you just convolve it to what we observe today, it's almost what we see now. It's...
Thank you. Any further questions in the room? Yes.
Hello, hello, Dr. Lorenzen, Deutschlandfunk. Can you really exclude any possible, maybe remotely possible, alternative explanation? So, or could it be, for instance, connected to the area where the jet is launched?
Actually, no. We cannot exclude. There are many alternatives to black holes, and there are many black holes in other alternative theories of gravity. What we are doing right now is excluding some of them. For instance, wormholes, as Aino has mentioned. We can exclude boson stars, which is also a very popular alternative. There are other alternatives which are more subtle and will require future observations. But what we see is consistent with Einstein's, and that's the simplest explanation. All of other explanation requires some more exotic explanation that would be difficult to explain with astrophysics, for instance, but are still allowed by the theory.
One little addition, we ran our simulations actually all kinds of physical scenarios. So we had actually disk-dominated, jet-dominated, emission would come from all over the place, and it turned out it almost always looked the same because of the light bending. That is a dominating effect. So, we simulated all of that, and wherever it comes from, the GR wins and sort of makes that shadow. That was actually the predictions and seemed to work out very nicely.
Okay, we'll take another question from social media. Are there any other galaxies that we know of where we might be able to observe black holes?
Yes, they are, and they are in our list. I mean, these galaxies and Sagittarius stars are very strong. As long as we develop our telescopes to go to bigger collecting surfaces, which make us more sensitive to the photons coming from the universe, we will
take another question
tick our list and check for the next ones.
The problem is if you want to resolve the black hole, you have to go to high. You can only do from space. And so watch for some papers in the next couple of weeks or so, which will describe how you could do this.
Do we have any final questions? Yes, the gentleman back there. You have a microphone and
Julian Moore, just a
you
European
have to
citizen,
go to high.
Astonished by what you have achieved. My congratulations. I simply wanted to ask you, did some simulations to give you some expectation of what you would be looking for in your results. According to the parameters of your modeling, did it give you any insight into the other parameters of the black hole, such as its magnetic field or its angular momentum? Did it shed any light on the generation of the jets? Pun intended.
So, yes, thank you for your question, citizen. That's very, very important. Rotation of the black hole is very difficult quantity to measure. And because of this blending of the light coming either from the jet or the accretion disk, it's very difficult for us, and this is something we discuss in the papers, to measure exactly how rapidly the black hole is spinning. But we think it is spinning because otherwise it would not make sense in terms of the energetics of the jet. And so we think it's spinning. And actually, if you want to ask, well, what is the spinning direction? We think it's pointing away from us. That's our best guess at the moment. And learning about magnetic fields, that's something that we are working on. But right now, we don't have a conclusive answer yet. Again, these are much higher, much more difficult quantities to measure. And we hope with the future observation to nail down also this information.
I would like to add here that at the moment we have a sense of rotation. So this is something that I mentioned, that it is clockwise on the sky. So this is something that we are certain about.
I may add on the magnetic fields that these data have still treasures waiting for us. We have obtained the total intensity images, but we are working also in the polarized light, which is also in the data. And when we learn about the polarized light, we also learn about the magnetic fields. This is one of the next things in our to-do list.
Thank you all. We will be closing this press conference shortly. Before I invite Commissioner Moedas to formally and officially close the press conference, let me, of course, thank our speakers here and all of you for being here today. I would also like to thank our interpreters and technicians, because it's not every day that they have to translate such a scientific language and also put up all this show. Our scientists will actually be with us still afterwards, so if journalists belatedly think of any questions, they're welcome to approach them. And with that, Commissioner, the floor is yours for the closing remarks.
Just a word of thanks to everyone for this amazing moment, but a word of thanks for the courage, because, you know, it's not easy for the scientists to take the risk. I mean, you were taking a risk of being here today, and that is something that is important for Europe, that you take the risk to be here, you take the risk to be in this moment, and to show to people the importance of science. And more important to that is that you made us dream today, and an important moment. You know, we go through difficult times, a lot of crises, a lot of problems, and sometimes we need these moments. And this morning, when I was reading a speech from Stephen Hawking that he delivered in Chile quite long ago. I thought that I would finish with a quote from him that would inspire us to be hopeful about the future and will inspire the leaders and the prime ministers and the presidents that are here today in Brussels. He said the following: "Black holes aren't as black as they are painted. They're not eternal prisons as we thought. Things can get out of a black hole, both to the outside and possibly to another universe. So, if you feel you are in a black hole, don't give up. There is always a way out."
Thank you all. Let me also invite you to join us outside, for those who are physically present here today, for the exhibition that we have on the project. And with this, we conclude the press conference. Thank you.
على البقعة، في الغسالة أو في النقع.